Good morning and half a day. Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Catherine Castro with the Guam Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to this very special briefing of the U.S. Small Business Administration's new Restaurant Revitalization Fund. The American Rescue Plan has appropriated $28.6 billion for the U.S. SBA to award relief to restaurants, caterers, bars, pubs, and the like via the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. We are so pleased to see this finally come to fruition so that companies like yours can avail of the relief you need to continue to operate your business. Thank you for everything that you do to support our local community. We are pleased to partner today with the Guam Hotel and Restaurant Association, the Guam Women's Chamber of Commerce, the Small Business Development Center, and the Small Business Administration's Guam branch office to bring this briefing to you to help you learn more about how your company can apply and navigate the application process. The session is being recorded and will be available for viewing again soon after the event is completed. All participants are on mute and questions can be sent during the presentation via the question feature on the panel located on the right side of your screen. We will be sure to get to them during the Q&A session after the presentation. I would like to now introduce you to Mary Rhodes, President of the Guam Hotel and Restaurant Association, for her welcoming remarks. Mary, good morning.
Half a day and good morning. Thank you everybody for joining us. It's really just so great to have the participation that we've seen from all of our members, also our non-members, all of the businesses who are interested in this program. In working together with the Guam Chamber of Commerce and the Guam Women's Chamber, GHRA has worked on a couple of programs in this last year so that we can continue to provide you with the information and resources available to you for these very important federal programs. We're very excited to have SBA and SBDC here to share more detailed information on some of the tips on how to apply and some of the best practices used in order to get through this program so you can easily fill out your grant applications. We're very grateful for the National Restaurant Association. As a member of NRA, they've really taken the lead in securing this fund through the American Rescue Plan. And so this grant, which is available as a grant, not to have to pay it back, will help sustain the future for a lot of businesses as we rebuild this economy. So we hope that you continue to share the information with some of your colleagues and get as many people on Guam to really apply for this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for this financial grant, which we hope will help sustain you for the next year or two. Thank you. I'd like to now introduce Laura Cepeda. She's the president for the Guam Women's Chamber. She's also the vice president of marketing for RTI.
Thank you, Mary. Hafideta and Mananasizoas, everyone. Thank you to GHRA and the Guam Chamber of Commerce for allowing us to co-host this special event for all of our small business community in the F&B industry. Thank you most especially to SBA and SBDC who makes these valuable webinars available for our small business community. I'd like to just give gratitude to all of you in this industry. I believe you're the unsung heroes of our pandemic. It's been a really rough time. And I had the opportunity of working with restaurants and food trucks to provide meals to our frontline heroes. And it was so beautiful to watch a lot of you sacrifice what you had to make this possible, to give a helping hand to our community, whether it was to just boost morale or to help build support. And you did it with a skeletal team or by yourselves or with children in your kitchen. So I just really would like to commend all of you for that and let you know that the Guam Women's Chamber, as well as all the other organizations here today, are taking the forefront and making sure that these resources are available for you and your businesses, as we know this is not easy for a lot of you who had to take a pause and take a break from years long in operation and be courageous in knowing when that time was, but coming back strong and trying to find the resources to build your livelihood back and to service our community again. So thank you so much. I'd like to introduce Jane Kwok from she is the Associate Network Director for the Pacific Islands SBDC.
Half a day. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having us, SBDC here, to be part of this training this morning. Just to reiterate with the Guam Chamber and the Guam Hotel Restaurant Association and also the Women's Chamber, thank you for hosting this webinar for majority of the business owner. Just keep in mind too, today we're gonna go over some information of the program as well as some of the tips and the things that you need to pay attention to when you're submitting the application. But don't feel alone, as the Guam SBDC is here to help you and support you when you're going through this process. Just remember to, our counseling services is free. So if you have any question and if you would like to have some help, to get a good understanding, making sure your application is correct before you submitted it, you know, you can get in contact with us. Our website is pacificsbdc.com. You can go ahead and request for counseling. We're gonna show our contact information later on during the PowerPoint presentation, but just remember to, we're here to help you. So please go ahead and sign up so it can help you to review the application before you submit it and give you, making sure that you submitting the correct information and putting everything in the right order. Now, without further ado, let me go ahead and introduce you, Mr. Kenneth Lujan, our SB Guam branch manager, as he is going to go over the program information and let you know more about what you need to do to get your application started. Ken?
Thank you, Jane, and good morning, everyone. Buenas, half a day. I'd like to thank also the Guam Chamber of Commerce, the Guam Women's Chamber of Commerce, GHRA, and of course, my resource partner, the SBDC, for hosting this event. It's a very good collaborative effort that we've all made as resource partners to get the information that you need in order for you to avail yourself of the grant opportunities that the SBA has to offer to you. So without any further delays, let's just get right into the program. The program first started out, the RRF first opened up its registration on Saturday, 2 days ago. We encountered some difficulties in doing so because the area code 671 and 670 within the CNMI was not recognized within the system. That was quickly resolved, and on Sunday, everyone had the opportunity to register. This morning, as of 2 a.m. this morning, the application portal has opened up. Within the first 3 hours of the application portal being open, SBA received 150,000 applications. And so that has created a big surge on the system. And we've noticed some slowing down, but we were able to resolve that. And so those of you who had the opportunity to get in this morning to put an application in there, your line, your number in the line there has not been deteriorated, or you weren't put in the back. You would be given the opportunity to complete your application and stay in the same line there too. So yes, it's been a very exciting morning for the SBA. The surge continues on, and what we want to do is we want to make sure that those who haven't had the opportunity to apply as of yet, gather the information that you need, gather the tips that you're going to get today, and ensure that the application process makes it easier for you, as well as documentation that you submit to SBA is complete. So what is the RRF? Let's just talk about the RRF right now. It's the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. And Catherine had mentioned that the American Rescue Plan Act became law not too long ago, March 11, 2021. And that's at that point in time they established the RRF. Within the Rescue Plan Act, Congress appropriated $28.6 billion for the RRF program, authorizing SBA to award these funds out to the community. Now, keep in mind that $2.6 billion will remain available until such time it is expended. So in other words, this is going to be on a first come, first served basis. And the funds must be utilized and be eligible for use no later than March 11, 2023. So you have a big span of utilizing these funds within the next 2 years. Next slide, please. So who is eligible? There are a lot of questions that are coming about as to the eligibility of this program. This program is a lot more flexible in terms of the other programs that we've had, like the PPP or EIDL. The flexibility that this program has is offered to a lot of companies who were subject to closure, or companies that were subject to restrictions by the state government. So we kind of broke it down and basically to the primary purpose of being served food or drink. So you'd have to be within a community or within the industry that you're actually serving food or drinks, such as restaurants, food stands, food trucks, which we see a lot here in Guam, caterers, bars, lounges, taverns, snacks, and non-beverage bars, breweries, bakeries, inns, and some licensed places where they have beverage alcohol producers. So here are a list of things, businesses that are going to be eligible for the program, for the RRF in that sense. Keep in mind that the ones with asterisks on it identifies that the business must have a greater than 33% on-site of comprised of their gross receipts being utilized for the purpose of serving food or drinks. So if you were a bakery, say for instance, and you were just doing wholesale type of operations, you may not be eligible unless within your bakery you're actually selling food or beverages within there and it constitutes at least 33% or more within your gross receipts. Next slide, please. So how much am I eligible for? At this point in time, the SBA may provide funding up to $5 million per location, not to exceed $10 million total for the applicant or any affiliated businesses. So you may have 3 businesses here in Guam, 3 separate businesses with 3 separate EIN numbers. Each location can apply up to $5 million for each location, but not to exceed $10 million aggregate total of your affiliated businesses. So in other words, each business can get, if you have 3 businesses, each business can get $3 million each because they did not exceed the $10 million threshold. The minimum award is $1,000. Anything below that, it's not going to be a process. So keep in mind that if you're looking for small dollar amounts, anything below that is not eligible for this program. Next slide. Now, there's a difference between the grant that we offer now, the RF, versus the grant that we were offering a couple months ago, which is the Shutter Venue Operators Grant, SVOG. Within the SVOG program, there was a requirement that you have to be registered in SAM.gov. In this particular instance, understanding the diversity that we have within the restaurant industry, SBA decided to not have that as a requirement that these applicants go into SAM.gov, and it's not a requirement that you have to have a DUNS or cage identifier. However, it is required that you have a TIN number or ITN number. In this particular instance, there was a question about citizenship. You must be a U.S. citizen or a TIN or ITN holder. So in other words, you could be a non-U.S. citizen with a TIN account or ITIN identifier and still be eligible for the program. Next slide, please. So entities that are not eligible, we identified entities that were eligible. Now we're going to identify the entities who are not eligible. An entity such as a state or local government operated business would not be eligible for the program. And as of March 13, 2020, anyone who owns and operates more than 20 locations, regardless of whether the locations do business under the same name, are not eligible for the program. Those who have a pending application for the Shutter Venue grant opportunity would not be also eligible for the program. Likewise with public traded companies, or those companies that are, as a result of the pandemic, have closed their operations permanently. They would not be able to avail themselves of the program as well. And likewise with nonprofit organizations. If a nonprofit organization were to own a for-profit organization, then it's the for-profit organization that can apply for the RRF and not the nonprofit organization. So keep that in mind too as well. And of course, last, if you're looking for funding sources below $1,000, they would not be eligible also. Next slide, please. These are different forms of organization. So pretty much most of the forms of organization are eligible for the grant RRF. You could be a sole proprietor, independent contractor, partner, partnership, corporation, S&C. You can be in the LLC, and we see a lot of that here in Guam lately. LLCs, self-employed individuals, tribal businesses, and of course LLCs that are taxed as C corporations or sole proprietorships. So pretty much Guam has the ability to apply for this program based on the type of form of organization that they have right now existing. Next slide, please. To continue on with it, we've had some concerns about the franchises. And franchises are any business concern operating as a franchise and meeting all the program requirements are eligible or is eligible for the program. However, the franchise must be enlisted on the SBA's franchise directory. If you're unable to get into SBA's franchise directory, then there's a process in which you would have to request from your franchisor the franchise disclosure document, which you have to submit to SBA for review, and SBA would then authorize that franchise for eligibility purposes. So if you are franchised and you're not concerned about the eligibility aspect of it, you can contact myself. You can either do that or look at the just do a Google search on SBA franchise directory and see if their list of franchises there. It's also located in SBA's website where you can pull the list of franchises that are eligible as well. But if you have any questions, you can also call my office. Next slide. Okay, in terms of eligibility, if you are a company that's been bankrupt or declared bankruptcy, but if you're under an approved plan of reorganization, such as a Chapter 11 or 12 or 13 bankruptcy, then you will be eligible for the financing of the RRF program. However, the applicants that declare bankruptcy that are permanently closed, they filed Chapter 7 liquidation bankruptcy, or Chapter 11, 12, or 13 without any approved plan of organization. Those are the entities that are not eligible for the program. Permanently closed does not include businesses who temporarily close their doors due to state or local restrictions or other pandemic causes, but are still in operation or have reopened. Next slide. Okay, now Guam experienced having the PPP first round and second round. If you receive the PPP program loan or even undergoing a second round of funding, any funds that are already received through the PPP will be subtracted. And when you do your calculations in the application, you'd have to subtract the first round as well as the second round funding for PPP into the equation. Applicants, they will be verified through your Social Security numbers or your EIN numbers or TIN number that you actually had a PPP loan amount. So make sure when you go to the calculations and you go through the application, ensure that you put the information that you received the PPP loan first round and second round. Now, some of the applicants may still be undergoing the second round and have not received the funding at this point in time. You'd still have to identify the dollar amount that was that you submitted in there as a deduction from your total amount that you're requesting under the RF. So upon applying for the RF, the applicant must withdraw any outstanding PPP applications if you are looking to seek more dollar amounts. So in other words, if you have a second draw and it's still pending, yet you want to take advantage of the grant monies, you can withdraw your second draw PPP application and not include it into the equation. So that way you can get more money from the RRF. Next slide, please. Now, one of the things that SBA is going to be requesting the applicant to do is to attest, to provide some attestations in terms of verifying the information that you submit over there, saying that it's true and correct, verifying that you are an established business, verifying that you do file taxes, et cetera, et cetera. So all applicants must certify that the current economic uncertainty makes the funding request necessary to support ongoing or anticipated operations. So in other words, if you are an applicant that is was fortunate during the pandemic to increase your sales in those receipts, and you attest that you didn't that you're in need of help and so forth, that may not be the case because of the fact that you actually have improved your revenues throughout the process. This program is based on the assisting applicants or businesses that were affected by the pandemic, negatively affected by the pandemic, and we want to make sure that they attest that they've lost revenues, and as a result, their revenues have gone down throughout the year. So there will be some certifications that you have to go through. Next slide, please. So again, with the flexibility of the RF in comparison to the other programs, with the PPP, you were limited, primarily for the protection of salaries, protection of paychecks, primarily that the usage of those funds were primarily allocated towards paycheck or salaries. It was allocated towards rent, towards mortgage insurance, utilities, and so there's certain limitations. In this particular instance, the RRF allows you to use the funds towards business expenses, such as your business maintenance expense, utility payments, payroll, supplies, food and beverage expenses, covered supplier costs, and operating expenses such as your marketing, your fees, your licenses, legal fees. So it gives you a different array of expenses that you can utilize and make towards the reconstruction of your project and reconstruction of your place, to the point where they even allow for expansion costs. Expansion costs are not allowable, but they allow for the construction of outdoor seating. So we see a lot of that happening here in Guam. You have these brick and mortar restaurants are now putting canopies outside. They're reconfiguring their space location to put more people inside and outside their establishment. So those costs can also be used for these funds. However, you cannot use the funds to expand your operations because now you're making more money. You can't do that for that purpose. It does allow you to apply it towards business debt, any debt services that you may have, principal and interest as well. You can apply it towards that purpose. Next slide. So when do I have to use the funds? Again, in comparison to the other programs, with the PPP, you had a 24-week period of covered period. Within the RRF, the funds must be spent on expenses that were incurred between February 15, 2020 to March 11, 2023. So you're looking at a 3-year span now in terms of utilizing your funds. So you have a lot of flexibility in how you use your funds within that certain time period, but please keep in mind that in doing so, you must make sure that you record every expense out there. If the business permanently closes after receiving the funds, the covered period will end when the business permanently closes, or on March 11, 2023, whichever occurs sooner. So if you receive the monies from the SBA and you decide that, okay, I just can't do this anymore, the market's not nice to us, it's not kind to us, it's giving us the revenues we need, we're going to close our business. So when you close your business operations, keep in mind that your period, the covered period ends that day that you close. But at the same time, too, SBA still requires that you maintain your documentation, so that way we can ensure that there wasn't any fraud or any activities that's going on, that we can still be auditable. Any funds not spent on eligible expenses by the time the covered period ends must be returned to the government. So, in other words, if you didn't expend all your funds at the time that you close your operations, it's the responsibility of the applicant to return those monies back to the federal government. Next slide, please. So when do I have to use the funds as a part of continue on? The use of funds assessment, after the total award funds have been exhausted, entities must provide a detailed expenditure report and certification for the required period. One way to help kind of help you with that is a good tip is to establish a separate business account or a bank account for the business that basically is used. All the funds will be going into that particular bank account, and then of course all the funds will be used to pay for expenses, and there's a good accurate accounting of such use. So that's one of the tips I like to kind of offer out there. Until the applicant completes the use of funds assessment beginning December 2021, applicants are required to provide self-reported, unaudited data detailing use of distributed funds each year through 2023. So there is going to be a recording period in which you have to submit to SBA that these are the funds that you utilize during this 1 year period up to 2023, that you've expended this dollar amounts for the purpose of eligible business expenses that we identified earlier. SBA will provide additional guidance that outlines the detailed reporting requirements and procedures within the coming weeks. So again, there's going to be a certain level of reporting that you as an applicant receiving the RRF would have to submit to SBA based on the guidelines they offer. Next slide, please. So when we look at the variation of business activities between 2019, 2020, and now 2021, SBA has come up with 3 different methodologies of calculating your gross revenues for the potential fund amount that you're going to be provided. So within calculation number 1, this applies to applicants in operation prior to or on January 1st, 2019. So these are entities, firms that have been in operation before 2019, January 1st. So you must have been in operation prior to that and operating. So this particular instance, you have to take your 2019 gross receipts minus 2020 gross receipts minus any PPP loan amounts that you may have. So simple calculation like this, because you do have the financial information for 2019, and then you can match it up with the financial information in 2020. So that'll be based on calculation number 1. Next slide. Calculation number 2, methodology number 2 would be applicants that began operations partially through 2019. So in other words, if you're an applicant that began operations partially in 2019, you may use to choose calculation 2 or number 3, and we'll discuss that later on. But number 3 could be a little bit quite longer in the processing time. So if you opened up your operations, say for instance in mid part of 2019, you would probably fall under this category, methodology number 2, in which you take the average 2019 monthly gross receipts times 12 minus 2020 gross receipts minus the PPP loan application. So calculation adds a little caveat there that you have to look at. You have to multiply your gross receipts in 2019 because it was just a partial year by 12 minus the 2020 gross receipts, of course, minus the PPP amounts. Next slide. And then the third final methodology in calculating the amount, potential fund amounts, is calculation number 3, which pertains to applicants that began operations on and before January 1st, 2020. So we've had some instances where we had some clients that wanted to start out the year 2020 with opening up the business operations, and of course, eventually what happened in February, a month later or so, the pandemic hits and everything starts to turn around. So the applicants that actually began their operations on or between January 1st, 2020 and March 10, 2021 would fall under this category. Also, applicants not yet open, but have incurred eligible expenses as of March 11, 2021 would also be utilizing methodology number 3 when they put their request in for a full amount funding. So you take your total amount spent on eligible expenses between February 15, 2020 and March 11, 2021, minus your 2020 and 2021 gross receipts, minus your PPP loan amounts. If you notice, it kind of got longer compared to number 1, number 2, so that that means it's got a little bit more complex in terms of the calculations, but that's the methodology that you need to follow. Okay? Applicants that began operations partially in 2019 may choose to use calculations number 2 or number 3. Again, however, calculations number 3 could require longer processing time. So you'd have to make that determination based upon your financial situation you have. Next slide, please. So what can I exclude from 2020 gross receipts? SBA determined that, okay, you do not need to include any of the following in the 2020 gross receipts. You don't include the proceeds that you received from the PPP, first draw or second draw. Do not include that in there as part of your gross receipts. Do not include any Section 1112 payments, which are CARES Act payments. Do not include any EIDL advances, EIDL loans, target EIDL advance, any other grants you receive from CARES Act. Do not include within your gross receipts any state and local grants, business grants. I believe GHRA had a grant program, and if you receive those grant programs, you do not include that as part of your gross receipts. In other words, we don't want you to create a balloon scenario where you're adding all these grant opportunities that you receive and exploding your gross receipts so that way you can get more money. You have to take those off. You cannot double dip. You cannot expand on that. So you need to eliminate that from your gross receipts when you're doing the calculations. Next slide, please. So how do I apply? Again, the portal opened up this morning at 2 a.m. Within the first 3 hours of the portal opening up, we had 150,000 applicants come in. And so there's going to be a lot of applications coming in for the next couple of days going forward. So what we would like you to do is we'd like you to go to the restaurants.sba.gov. That's the SBA platform. You do not apply with your local lender. You do not apply anywhere else other than SBA directly. So you have to go directly through the SBA's platform, and it's at it's at restaurants.sba.gov. You can also go to some point of sale vendors. The SBA is actively looking at it. I'm going to turn it briefly over to Jane, and Jane can probably explain the point of sale, how that works.
Okay, so if you do have, just note that if you do have your point of sale system with Toast or Square, you can go to their website and apply directly with them. They will be, communicating all your point of sales information with SBA, so you don't need to set up a separate account at the restaurant.sba.gov in order to apply. So for Toast and Square, you can go directly to their website to find out more information about the RRF. If you have a POS system that is Clover and Aloha, so they do have a POS system report that you can pull directly specifically for this RRF purposes. So you just need to, you still need to create an account under the restaurant.sba.gov and apply through the website. So those are the information from the POS vendor that you need to be watching out for. Like I said, if you have any specific question, you can contact us at the SBDC. Back to you, Ken.
All right, thank you, Jane. And based on our survey, we haven't heard too many applicants or businesses here in Guam that actually utilize a point of sale vendor. But if you do have questions regarding it, please contact us or the SBDC for any assistance on that. That's another option that you can apply to it. The third option that's being offered, which is kind of difficult in terms of us to do this, there's a telephone number which you have before you. It's area code 844-279-8898. These are telephonic applications, and it will take longer for processing because you have to do things over the phone. There's no text exchange. There's no documentation exchange. So everything's done over the phone, and then of course you have to go back and make sure that you transmit it again. But keep in mind too that the hours of operation, if you want to go do this by way of telephone, it's not Monday to Friday 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Guam time. If you convert those hours, it's going to be Tuesday through Saturday, 10 p.m. to 10 a.m. Guam time, Guam CNMI time. Okay, so keep in mind that you would have to spend not only a longer processing time, but also spend some sleepless nights just to get up and do this. So I highly encourage that you go online, utilize the restaurants.gov application portal. And I think it'd be much easier for you to process your applications through that route. Next slide, please.
Can I just add in additional information? If you do apply on the restaurant.sba.gov, it is recommended that you do use the Google Chrome browser to apply. Try to do it on a desktop and on a computer. It is not going to work on a phone or cell phone. It's just going to make it difficult for you to upload documentation and do any sort of signature on your phone. So it is best to use Google Chrome. Don't use Safari. You're going to experience some difficulty there. So that's the tips that we have for applying online.
All right, thank you, Jane. That's a good tip. Let's go to the next slide, please. So what do you need? What kind of documentation is needed in this case? There is an application. There was a sample application that's offered by SBA. I recommend that you download that sample application, try to fill it out as much as possible, because when you go online, it make it easier and faster for you to process your application online, as opposed to trying to wait for it and answer each question as you go along, trying to identify what the answer is. So download that form, SB Form 3175, the application form, the initial and sign it, and that will be downloadable through the SBA's portal. Its completion of this form digitally in the SBA grant form will satisfy this requirement. So again, everything, it's not going to be a hard copy submission. It's going to be a digital submission. But then again, prepare yourself with the sample application that's offered by the SBA. In addition to that, there is going to be a requirement of the 4506T that must be completed and signed by the applicant. We understand that that we file our taxes directly here with Guam Revenue Taxation, and we've been working with Director Daphne and her staff up there in Revenue Tax to provide the tax information that we may need. The SBA is not going to go to the IRS to pull this information because there's no information for them to pull. So we have made a mutual agreement with the Revenue Tax to provide the information that we need to. But it's an encumbering upon you to ensure that the 4506 is provided to us, so that way we can effectively request the information from our local tax division here in Guam. In addition to that, gross receipt documentation, you need your business tax returns, your 1040Cs, Schedule C, Schedule Fs, any partnership agreements, any partnership forms, the 1065. You would need at least the last 3 months bank statements that you may have. Externally and internally prepared financial statements, such as your income statements, or your profit and loss statements. In addition to that, you need your point of sale reports, including what's called the 1099Ks. Keep in mind that we understand that some companies have not filed their 2020 tax returns at this time. So the gross receipt tax or any other form of tax documentation that you utilize to record your revenues will be acceptable for this round of funding until such time that you produce your filed 2020 tax returns. Next slide, please. Okay, so the documents that you need to in order to apply, again, calculations number 1 and 2. We kind of went over that, and I'll go over it real quickly for you. Again, your application, your tax verification, your gross receipt taxes, that's your tax returns. 3 months of bank statements, your 2020 gross receipts. Again, it's preferred you have the point of sale reports or GRTs in this case, tax returns filed, and of course, you have your profit and loss statements, income statements, etc. Next slide. Calculation number 3, similar to that again. Just go briefly through that. Again, identifying your eligible expense documentation. And it's pretty much saying payroll documents, outdoor seating expenditures. So a little bit more documentation is going to be required on calculation number 3, because again, you have to substantiate these expenses that you had prior, within the mid part of the pandemic. Next slide.
Ken, can I just add in something in there?
Sure.
So for the internal prepare financial statement, so if you do end up sending in your QuickBooks documentation, your QuickBooks income statement, or your internally prepare financial statement, you do need to make sure you sign, dated, and certify that those information is correct and accurate to the best of your knowledge as the business owner. This is not being signed by your accountant, but by the business owner to certify that it is correct. So please make sure you do that before you turn it in. You don't want to turn it in and then wait for SBA to tell you to do that, and that will delay the process from there.
All right. Okay, next slide. Again, a continuation of that. If you are a brew pub, tasting room, tap room, brewery, winery, distillery, or bakery, again, these are documentations that you would have to submit that would indicate to the SBA that your operations comprise of at least 33% of gross receipts. That was earmarked primarily for the purpose of selling food and beverages. Inns are also eligible for that, but then again, they have to do the same thing too, demonstrating 33% of gross receipts for that time period. Next slide. So where do we get help? Or shall I say, where do you get help? Again, you can contact that 800 number at 844-279-8898. Keep in mind the operations are Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which equates to Tuesday through Saturday, 10 p.m. to 10 a.m. Guam time. Or you can get the assistance by calling my office phone. It's 472-7277. The website that SBA has right now currently for the RF, they have multiple languages that you can use: Japanese, Chinese, Korean, Tagalog, Vietnamese, Thailand. They even have language for Marshallese and also Chukese on there. So you have multiple languages that you can at least understand how the program works and go and follow along with it. Or you can contact our very valuable resource partner, the SBDC, or locally. You can go to pacificsbdc.com or just do a QR code on that screen there, and avail yourself of the free opportunities, the free advice and counseling that they have to offer to you as well. Next slide, please. So here are some best practices, and Jane could probably jump in every now and then because I know she's going through this right now. You have to provide complete documentation. Okay, that means applications with incomplete documentation will be rejected. Okay, keep in mind that this is on a first come, first served basis. And so what they want to do is they want to process applications as quickly as possible, get the funds out as quickly as possible. And so, if they see an incomplete application, they're going to reject it, and they're going to send you back to the line again for you to complete it and so forth. So the review process will restart when complete documentation is provided. Delays could jeopardize the applicant from receiving the award. Okay, so please to ensure that you have complete documentation. And complete documentation would be documents that need to be signed and dated and attested by the business owner as well. How do you leverage your resources? You can utilize CPAs, other kind of professionals that can help you ensure that the documentation, in this instance, the financial information is accurate. So that way, when you do a test to it, you feel comfortable with the information that's provided to you. SBA is not able to make corrections or on behalf of the applicants. Again, so you need to ensure that the application you submit is correct and accurate. You can call the call center if you have any questions, either that or you can contact our office for additional information. Applicants who still intend to apply for a PPP, that will be the RF applicants, are advised to complete their PPP application in advance of the RF application. So again, if you have a round 2 application, or even you're dealing with round 1 right now, you have to complete that in advance. So that way we can ascertain that you're taking that off the list. Keep in mind that the PPP program expires this month, at the end of this month. So decisions have to be made accordingly to ensure that you're getting the best opportunity from both the PPP as well as the RRF. Next slide, please.
Again, just a little bit more emphasize on the application correction is that if you need to call the call center and make the correction from there, it will put you back of the line. So you need to make sure that before you hit that submission button that all your information is correct. Any correction that you make, you will be put back to the end of the line. Just be aware of that.
Yes, that's where it says the review process will restart when complete documentation is provided. Yeah. Again, you're not going to be holding that line up. The line's going to continue to move. You're just going to go be put in the back of the line. To such time you're ready, then your number will be called and funding will be available once it's complete.
Yeah, so it is best to fill. So I've been having clients fill out that funding sample application first before they put it online. So that's probably a better practice than just go straight and pull information out from your drawer.
True. Good tip. Right. Next slide. So this does not pertain to us right now. This pilot period, that pilot period ended right before the registration date. However, this is day 1. This is day 1 in terms of the opening of the launching of the RF. So within the next 21 days, including today, SBA would prioritize the application process with all eligible applicants. Only applications from small businesses owned by women, veterans, and socially economically disadvantaged applicants will be funded during this period of time. So you have, again, through that process that I mentioned earlier about certifications or attestation, you have to testify or attest to the fact that you are a women-owned business, or you are a veteran-owned business, or you are socially and economically disadvantaged businesses. So within that time period between today and the next 20 days thereafter, 21 days, SBA would be prioritizing the funding amounts towards these eligible groups that's identified there. It's not to say that you cannot apply. You have to wait until 21 days after that if you do not fall in these categories. You could still apply. and still get approved, but you're just not going to get funded within 21 days because the initial fundings are actually going to go towards these groups here. So on the 22nd day, if you were processed and you're approved, the 22nd day you can get funded then. That's what it means by saying all eligible applications will be processed and funded until program funds are exhausted. So keep in mind, if you're an applicant, you're a women-owned business that's owned and controlled, and that's 51% owned and controlled by women. Business, you would attest that you are 51% owned and controlled. You attest that you're a veteran, 51% owned and controlled, and or socially and economically disadvantaged, owned and controlled. Keep in mind that you can combine these groups to establish a 51% form control. So if you have a female owner, if you have 3 individuals in a corporation, each having 33%, say for instance, and you have a woman owner, a veteran owner, and a non-categorized individual, just the combination of the women owner and the veteran owner makes it a 66% own and control. So therefore, you'd be eligible for the program during that time period, or at least you'd be eligible for the funding during that time period. You'd be categorized in that area. All right. Next slide, please. Again, I mentioned about the 51% own and control. This is what they're basically looking at here. One or more individuals, women-owned, veterans, socially economic disadvantage. Applicants must self-certify on the application that they met the eligibility requirements. So please keep in mind, if you're husband and wife, 50-50 operational, you would not qualify if the wife is non-veteran but the husband is veteran. You would not be eligible. You would be eligible for the fund, but you would not be eligible as part of the priority groups. So you could still apply for the RRF because you're eligible, but you're not going to be part of the priority group within that 21-day period. And you cannot go there and change your organizational structure to say, I'll make you 51, I'll give you 1% more so you can be 51% just for the purpose of applying. They'll notice that on the application process and notice that you did that intentionally. In doing so, you'd be automatically disqualified. Next slide, please. So there are questions about what's the socially disadvantaged, what are economically disadvantaged individuals. Socially disadvantaged individuals are those who have been subject to racial, ethnic prejudice or cultural bias because of their identity as a member of a group without regard to their individual qualities. So if you remember the Black Americans, Hispanic Americans, Native Americans, including Alaskan Natives and Native Hawaiians, Asian Pacific Americans, or subcontinental Asian Americans, then you'd be categorized as a socially disadvantaged individual and meet that definition. If you are an economically disadvantaged individual that are socially disadvantaged, whose ability to compete in the free enterprise system has been impaired due to diminished capital and credit opportunities as compared to others in the same business area who are not socially disadvantaged, then you would be considered to be economically disadvantaged. So just to kind of give you an extreme example, if you are Bill Gates, you are not economically disadvantaged. However, if you're me, Ken Lujan, you'd probably be an economically disadvantaged. So I don't know if that was a good example, but next slide, please. So as an eligibility for a priority group applicant, entities reorganization for purposes of qualification for the priority period will result in automatic disqualification of the award. Again, if you decide to convert over and give one person another share just to make that entity a woman-owned or veteran-owned, majority-owned, for purpose of qualifying for that period, would automatically be disqualified. So please keep that in mind. Next slide. So what the SBA has also identified is in this time period of 21 days, they're going to set aside applications, for certain levels of businesses, because we recognize in the restaurant industry, you can have your small restaurants like your food trucks versus your big franchises out there. They set aside certain dollar amounts for applicants with 2019 gross receipts of not more than 500,000. They put $5 billion to set aside for for those applicants, to fund those applicants as they come through. In addition, $4 billion is also set aside for applicants with 2019 gross receipts from the revenue dollar amounts from $500,001 to $1.5 million. And also additional $500 million is set aside for applicants for 2019 gross receipts of not more than $50,000. So they've done some set aside money so that way they can address the concerns of those businesses within that particular category that desperately need the money and make sure that the money's available to them. So SBA has the right to reallocate these funds at the discretion of the administrator. So if they see that certain groups in the set aside levels are not utilizing the monies, then those monies can be reappropriated to different levels that need it the most. Next slide, please. All right, so I think the presentation is concluded, but we are definitely open for questions and answers. I understand this can be a chat box open. This is the opportunity for you to ask the questions that are not presented within the presentation. So I'm open to the floor.
Catherine, can we go ahead and show the website for some of the information that individual might need first?
Yes, sure.
Okay.
Let's do that real quick.
Okay, so if you have any question and you're wondering where the sample application is at, you can go directly to the sba.gov/restaurant section. So under the Restaurant Revitalization Funds, there's all the information here, how to apply program detail. So if you have any question about the program detail, you can definitely download this fund program guide. In addition to that, when I mentioned that you can take advantage of filling out the sample application first to make sure your information is correct before you go online, you can download this sample application as well. SBA also posted a list of questions that is under this RRF knowledge-based support documentation. This is where all the FAQ question is at. So if you have any specific question, you can go on that specific page. Let me go ahead and open this up. There are about 105 questions that is under that page. So if you for some questions, actually some client have mentioned, if my spouses, if I'm a sole prop and I own this restaurant, does my spouses need to sign the 4506? That question is actually here as well. So no, they don't. Your spouses don't need to sign if they're not part of the business. So you can go through all of this question if you have wondering what are the answer to some of the questions that you might have. You can go over here to take a look at it as well. Back to you, Ms. Catherine.
Thank you very much. This is great information. I'd like to invite the Guam Hotel and Restaurant Association, Mary Rhodes, and the Guam Women's Chamber. I believe it's going to be Renee, who will we'll all take turns asking the questions that have been put up on the question feature. To turn on your webcams and your audio. Mary, do you see questions? And Renee, do you see the questions on your chat?
Yeah, I have one question.
Okay, Renee, why don't you go ahead and ask their question?
Okay, for those that were working on the application and they receive an error message regarding token verification, and it must be a US number when they're using a Guam number, they are stuck on that message and can't get into the portal. What should they do from there?
The first question I've asked is when did they try it? Because if they attempted to try on Saturday, which I've had a couple calls already on that, I asked them to try again now, because that issue in terms of it being stuck, that number being stuck, was resolved on Sunday. So that's usually what I would ask first, is when did they last try? And if they last tried on Saturday and never went back in, then I would encourage them to go back in and then register and try then. Should be working.
Thank you.
Thank you, Renee. Mary, how was your question?
The question I received is based on the authentication process, and it says to wait a few minutes, but after 5 hours, several attempts were made, and then they had to withdraw and restart again. What's the best way to move forward?
I think they encountered the surge during that time period with authentication. What we were instructed to do is encourage the applicant to retry again. They did not lose their line number when they first got in there, so they had to go back and re-accomplish what they didn't complete, but their line number is still there ahead of everyone. Again, they made some adjustments to the system to allow additional surges that we anticipate to have within the next coming days. So I would suggest that they go back in there and re-accomplish what they first started out.
Can I add on? So
Sure.
Actually, SBA will send you an email when your account is unlocked. So you just need to wait for the notification from SBA.
Right, and they'll indicate that they received the information, but now you just need to complete it. Again, not losing your place in line.
All right, thank you. So the question that we received here was in reference to qualification for socially disadvantaged businesses. Does Chamorro owned qualify?
Yes, we are in that category, but then the question I have in terms of Chamorro owned, how much is Chamorro owned? Because again, if they're 50% Chamorro owned and the other 50% is not Chamorro owned, they qualify in terms of being eligible to apply, but they would not be within that priority group that I identified within the first 21 days. So Chamorros do, if it's 100% Chamorro owned, then of course they are socially disadvantaged. The other question comes in, are they economically disadvantaged? Because again, they can be socially disadvantaged, but not economically disadvantaged. So that's another litmus test that they have to go to identify if their eligibility is there or not.
Super, thank you. Ladies, do you have questions?
Yes, I have another one. Can you speak a little bit more about those franchises that need to be on the SBA list? Is there a long wait if they're not already on the list?
That's a very good question. I don't know what the processing time it is. The wait can be determined based upon your ability to provide the documentation. So it all depends on what type of documentation you have between you and the franchisor, or them and the franchisor. So if they need to obtain information from the franchisor, that may cause delays in terms of them getting the information to the SBA. But typically in a situation like this, if they indicate that they're trying to go after the RF funds, I'm sure the SBA franchise office would set that as a priority, just to make sure that everything's good to go and they're eligible to apply. So I guess it all depends on their ability to obtain the information that we need, and then once it gets to us, then our clock starts to tick from that point on.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question based on fiscal year. This person's fiscal year runs April 1 through March 31. Do they enter the financial data using gross receipts based on a calendar year or their fiscal year period?
Well, I would think based upon when they filed their taxes. Of course, they'd have to look at it as taking the 12-month average when they look at 2019. And so we're going to look at the 12-month average. So they may have a fiscal year, but we're looking at 12-month average that they had between January to December 2019 versus January to December 2020, and doing the comparison in that instance. If they see the gross receipts they're making more money in 2020 as a result of the pandemic, then of course, obviously, they may not be eligible for the loan or for the financing. But they would look at the 12-month average. I would base it upon the calculation that they're utilizing, calculation number 1, number 2, and number 3, and how they can apply it.
So just to clarify, Ken, they should be using calendar year, January through December.
Right, because they're looking at the 12-month average.
Okay.
Okay.
I think it'll be to their advantage that you do that, because then they're taking in the full year activity versus a partial year activity.
Right.
Thank you. So as a clarification to the question that I asked in reference to the Chamorro-owned business, there's a clarification request for, can you please clarify about economically disadvantaged? What does that mean?
Economically disadvantaged, we have within our 8A program, which we don't utilize in this instance because it gets a little bit more restrictive, but within our 8A program, there is a requirement that you must meet, which your net worth should not exceed more than $250,000, and that's excluding your primary residence. So if you have a threshold beyond that, then you're not economically disadvantaged. But that's a determination that the SBA would make on the RRF. It's a little bit more flexible, but that's the gauge. There is a citation that I could probably provide to them. Pull this up real quick here. Okay, if they go to establish a socially and economically disadvantaged, you have to go to 13 CFR, which is Code of Federal Regulation. 13 CFR 124.103 and 13 CFR 124.104. And those are
the 13
yes,
CFR.
Yeah, 13 CFR 124.103 is for socially disadvantaged.
Right.
Define definition. And 13 CFR 124.104, that would identify the economically disadvantaged definition there. So they can, and that's the governing rule for those two categories, economically and socially disadvantaged.
Okay, I'm putting that in the chat. Any other questions, ladies?
Yeah, I just had another one come through. Can a company or its group of the subsidiary that has more than 500 employees qualify for this program?
I believe there is I think that the restriction, there's no restriction on the number of employees. I think it's just you're limited to number of locations, how many locations you have. $5 million per location, up to an aggregate of, including affiliates, $10 million total. So here in Guam, I'd be surprised to see a $5 million location here in Guam. So if they combine their locations, then they're probably the aggregate will probably get close to $5 million. But I don't see any companies here reaching a $5 million per location thing or so. But I think to answer that question again directly, I think it's based on location, not based on number of employees.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mary?
That's all I have on the chat. Thank you.
Okay. I have one more question, Ken.
Sure.
After the 21 days of priority funding given to the identified groups, will SBA give out any data as to how much funding is left for other applications not part of the priority list?
I'm sure that there's going to be data disseminated down because Congress is wanting to know. As a matter of fact, Congress is wanting to know today how the program launched, and so based on this morning's meeting, our folks in Washington has to report back to Congress as to its progress that's taking place. So I believe within the next 24 days, the next 21 days, there's going to be collection of data being made, and then of course reported back to Congress as to what the findings are. Hopefully, once those findings are cleared for distribution to the public, I'll certainly share that information with you once we have it. Now, similar to the PPP program, PPP reports and so forth, that information will be once it's cleared for distribution, then I'll send it out to everyone.
Thank you so much. It looks like that is the last of our questions. Ken and Jane, would you like to have some parting words?
Actually, Kat, sorry, I do have one more question.
Oh, super.
It just came through. What about, I know that the grant allows for brick and mortar restaurants, but what about restaurants or outlets within a hotel that is an independent operator and not part of the hotel itself?
Sure, if they have a contract with the hotel and they're an independent operator who has their own identifying number, EIN, TIN, ITN, IN, they can apply for it. The hotel cannot apply for the grant funds, but as an independent contracted out operator within the hotel, they are eligible for it.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, another question.
Sure.
Is the affiliate question based on all sister companies held by the parent company?
I guess for an affiliation rule, yes, we will look at the parent company as well as any other affiliate businesses. The question would be who's applying? Is it the parent company applying, or is it the smaller businesses applying? Because again, for the affiliation side of it, we want to make sure that if you have 10 businesses underneath one parent and one business decides to apply for 5 million, the other one applies for 5 million, then the third one applies for 5 million. We're saying within that affiliate conglomeration of businesses, they've exceeded the 10 million threshold. So now the third business is not eligible for applying for 5 million because the other two already take up the $10 million total. So that's the consideration that SBA would make is when we look at affiliations is who is tied in, how are they tied in, and how do we control eligibility in that case?
Okay. And one more question.
Sure.
Renee?
Yes, okay. Do businesses who are direct or solely supplying restaurants qualify for this or any grants?
If they are a wholesaler, they do not. If they retail as part of the wholesale operations, because we've seen some wholesalers that actually have a retail outlet within the company. If they can, again, constitute or identify 33% gross of their gross receipts that was geared towards providing services for food and beverage, then they would qualify. But as a standalone wholesaler, they do not qualify.
Thank you.
And Ken, I know that there was a period to apply where there was going to have a pilot period and then a set aside for the priority groups. When is the due date to submit the final application for all companies?
Wow, that's a good question because the due date is up to it's when March 11, 2023, or when the funds expire. So
funding, yeah. So do it as soon as possible.
soon as possible. I mean, they have until March 11, 2023 to apply, which is another 2 years from now. But if those funds are expired, then the opportunity's not there. That's just why we're encouraging them to do the due diligence and putting their application together as expedient as they can. And once they do that, submit the application in so that way they could be standing in line getting the funds. Because once those funds run dry, I'm not sure if Congress would then recreate another appropriation for the purpose of doing that. Keep in mind that these are grant monies that are not being paid back to the government. So it's not going to be as easy going to Congress and saying, give me more free money, as opposed to having like a PPP, which ends up being a loan if you don't utilize it. Again, I encourage the whole community of Guam and CNMI to avail themselves of this opportunity, because as Mary had mentioned, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. So take advantage of it, but don't take advantage to the point where you get yourself in trouble because you have to testify or test that the information you provide is true and correct to the federal government, because you're getting federal monies, federal assistance. So keep that in mind as well. So I go back and I encourage the community, take advantage of it, utilize your resources here. You have a wonderful organizations as the Guam Chamber of Commerce, the Women Chamber of Commerce, and GHRA, and so on, and of course the SBDC to help you get this process through. So utilize them as much as you can too.
Yeah. So we keep having these questions, and this is great. Another question is: are businesses who operate tour but serve food as part of the tour and also offer food and beverage eligible to apply?
Yes, again, if they can show that their gross receipts exceed 33%, that was utilized towards the serving of that food and beverage. So in other words, we used to have a sunset tour in Guam a couple years back, and so although that was primarily for the tourists, they're selling dinner as part of the sunset tour, food and beverages. And so if they can constitute that 33% or more of their gross receipts went towards that activity, then they would be eligible for the program. However, they can't constitute or justify 33%, and only 20%, then they're not eligible for the program. Yeah, the threshold is 33% or more.
Just be careful too, because you need to show documentation, the breakdowns, right? So your GRT filings, tour services and the food and beverage is going to be separated. You're going to need to be able to show those documentation to support the 33%.
Correct. Good question. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for participating in today's event and for asking all of these great questions. Again, please do reach out to any one of our organizations, and SBDC as well as SBA. Anybody would like to have some parting comments before we end the webinar? Ken and Jane?
Ken?
Yeah, I just want to encourage everyone to go to restaurants.sba.gov, submit your application to the portal. Make sure that you have a completed application before doing so. Get your documentation in order. But at the same time, too, don't hesitate and don't wait to the last moment for you to do that. It's a first come, first served basis. Although there's $28 billion out there, imagine within the first 3 hours, 150,000 applications went through. So there's more to follow after that. So don't be late, don't procrastinate, get your application in as much as you can. And if you need any help and assistance, you have all this resources available to you. Please use it at your own discretion, at your own will. It's free. We're here to help you out at the same time too. So avail yourself of the program. All right. And then again, thank you, ladies, for having me here to do the presentation as well.
Just a reminder too, the SBDC is here to help you in preparing the application. So I really welcome you to sign up on our website under pacificsbdc.com. Counseling, like I said, is free. So sign up and have our independent contractor and our business advisor to review your application first before you submit the application. It is to help you to make sure that you get your answer as quickly as possible. So to eliminate the going back and forth with the SBA to turn in additional documentation. So don't be afraid to get a hold of us. Our phone number is 735-2590. Again, you can visit our website. We have all the SBA COVID information on our webpage under pacificsbdc.com. Thank you for the Chamber and the GHRA and the Women's Chamber for having us today.
Thank you, Jane. Mary and Laura.
I just want to thank everybody again for this wonderful partnership to bring this information out to our business community. I know that it's been a very challenging year, but with challenges come great opportunities. And, you know, Guam is definitely, Guam and Saipan are definitely beneficiaries of this through the hard efforts of a lot of different organizations in getting this through. So I encourage all of the businesses to at least try to apply, see if you're eligible. I know that it is quite a process, but nothing is really ever easy, but we have great organizations like SBA and SBDC to help you out. I know that SBDC has been really ramping up and doing onboarding with all of their financial advisors. And so I believe that they have 8 different advisors that can help you, as well as SBA. So thank you, Jane and Ken, again, for leading this and really getting the assistance out to the business community, because if there's ever a time to rebuild our economy and re-energize people, you know, definitely a grant program for one of the hardest hit industries is extremely important. So thank you.
Yes, indeed. Laura?
I'm just echoing what Mary had said. Thank you everyone for making this possible, and also thank you to all the businesses that are here today. As Mary has mentioned, and all of us, we really encourage you to take advantage of these opportunities. It's amazing that it's available for all of us. For the Guam Women's Chamber, please reach out if you need any assistance trying to get through to SBDC or SBA. They have been very helpful with our co-partners, GHRA and Guam Chamber. They have been so instrumental in helping our small business community get off the floor, and it's just nice to see the community come together. And that's what we're here for, is to come together and work to reopen our economy as a community. So please look out for our websites, our announcements in our email newsletters, and also on social media. We can be sharing all the information that we also find from the Chamber with all of you. So thank you so much.
Excellent. Very well said, everybody. Thank you all for joining us today. On behalf of the Guam Chamber of Commerce, the Guam Hotel and Restaurant Association, the Guam Women's Chamber, we thank Jane Kwok from the Pacific Islands SBDC Network and Ken Lujan from SBA for their time and their valuable information sharing with us today. Please have a good rest of your morning and afternoon. Take care, everybody.
Bye, everyone.